In 1957, 5-year-old Ava Collins walked out of her home and vanished. 1 minute, she was a bright little girl with a red lunchbox. The next, she was gone. For over 50 years, everyone thought they knew who took her. They were wrong. The town of Mill Creek was turned upside down. Police searched. Neighbors whispered, but nothing was ever found. The main suspect left town, and the case went cold, buried by time and fear. But Ava's mother never gave up hope, keeping her daughter's room exactly as she left it. Then, 53 years later, a journalist reviewing the old files found something everyone had missed. A single piece of evidence that blew the case wide open. It wasn't a clue that led to a killer, but something far more shocking. A trail that led to a living woman. Who she was and why the truth was hidden for so long is a story no one saw coming. A cold October sunrise settled over Mill Creek, the kind that made every porch light look a little dimmer. And in the middle of that quiet street, 5-year-old Ava Collins took her final walk toward the school she never reached. It was supposed to be an ordinary morning, a red lunchbox in her hand, a loose braid bouncing against her shoulder, and a mother watching from the doorway with the kind of comfort only small towns promise. But Mill Creek wasn't as safe as it looked. This opening image matters because it reveals the single detail every investigation returned to. Ava's route was barely 300 yards long, yet she vanished inside that tiny stretch of road. No witnesses, no sound, no struggle, just absence. And detectives would later agree on one painful truth. Whatever happened to Ava happened fast, planned, and in the kind of silence only someone familiar with the town could create. The moment Ava stepped past the last white fence on Mill Creek Road, time seemed to fold in on itself. That stretch of gravel was always quiet, but on October 14th, 1957, it felt unnaturally still. A milk truck passed at 7:42 a.m. The driver later swore he saw Ava walking, swinging her lunchbox like any child her age. By the time he looped back just 6 minutes later, she was gone. This is where the case turns unsettling. There were no skid marks, no abandoned belongings, no signs of a chase. Detectives reconstructed the timeline dozens of times, each reconstruction ending the same way. Ava disappeared within a window so small it almost felt engineered. The absence of evidence became the evidence itself. Someone with precision, someone with confidence, someone who knew exactly when the road was empty. And although the town tried to stay calm, the truth spread quickly. Kidnappings didn't happen in Mill Creek, not unless the person responsible lived close enough to study her routine. Rumors hit Mill Creek faster than any official report. The name on everyone's lips was Jack Rourke, the quiet mechanic who lived just 3 houses away from the Collins family. He worked odd hours, kept to himself, and had a habit of watching the neighborhood from his garage door. Detectives questioned him that same afternoon. His answers were flat, rehearsed, almost too steady. And then came the moment no one could explain. Rourke packed his bags and left town that night, driving straight toward the Ohio border without telling a single person. The panic settled like fog. Doors were locked. Children stayed inside. And police fought the growing fear that they'd just watched their prime suspect disappear forever. Within weeks, the investigation stalled. No body, no confession, and a suspect who'd slipped out of Pennsylvania before anyone could stop him. The case began to sink under its own weight. Files were boxed. Evidence was labeled insufficient. And Ava's disappearance became another quiet tragedy. Small towns try to forget. But this decision closing the case without answers would become the biggest mistake in Mill Creek's history. Because hidden inside those old folders was a single detail no one bothered to follow. A detail that decades later would expose how far the truth had been buried. When the case was reopened in the early 80s, detectives walked into a file room that felt more like a mausoleum of abandoned stories. Dust covered every box, but one folder of us looked strangely untouched, almost waiting. Inside it lay a piece of evidence that should have been a turning point. A shoeprint photograph taken near a ditch behind the old maple grove. It was small, sharp-edged, and didn't match Ava's shoes. The print belonged to an adult who'd stepped off the road, almost as if they were waiting in the shadows. Yet back in 1957, the print was dismissed as inconclusive, filed away without analysis, and never compared to anyone, not even Jack Rourke. As investigators reviewed the file, they found more cracks. Witness statements weren't crossed. The search grid ended just short of the grove. The school route map had handwritten marks that no one admitted making. Each overlooked detail pointed to the same unsettling pattern. This wasn't just a sloppy investigation. Someone missed things that shouldn't have been missable. And when the team examined the evidence logs, they noticed something worse. One envelope was missing entirely. The log showed it held a handwritten note found near the creek. The note had vanished, just like Ava. Most people believed Ava Collins' story had settled into legend, something Mill Creek whispered about but no longer chased. But for investigative journalist Lauren Holla, cold cases weren't stories. They were unfinished business. Working on a documentary about forgotten disappearances, she requested access to the archived files. With no words, she noticed what generations of professionals overlooked: a yellowed envelope wedged behind the case folder's spine. Inside was a letter written in 1958, never indexed, never opened. It was addressed to the Mill Creek Sheriff's Office, signed only with the initials Mr. the letter mentioned. A child moved across state lines, and a mechanic who shouldn't be trusted. Hallie recognized the initials instantly. Martha Rourke, Jack's sister. This was the first real link between Ava and the Rourke family, a connection deeper than proximity. Hallie didn't stop there. She matched the handwriting with public records, then traced the sister's address history. One address stood out: a small rental home in Columbus, Ohio, occupied during 1958 and 1959 but under a different name. The letter didn't just revive the case, it rewired Italiano. And the question Holly asked next would unravel the entire mystery. If Martha moved a child, whose child was it? The more Holly studied the letter, the stranger it became. It didn't read like a threat or a confession, it read like a warning. Martha wrote about pressure, fear, and a man who crossed a line he couldn't undo. She described a late-night drive, a panicked child, and orders she claimed she didn't fully understand. But the most chilling line was the one investigators never saw. "She's alive, but not for long if he finds out I told someone." The phrasing shook Holly. Martha wasn't hiding a crime. She was trying to report one. This single page forced investigators to reconsider everything they assumed about Jack Rourke. Was he the abductor, or was someone else pulling the strings? For the first time in 53 years, the case didn't point toward a dead end. It pointed toward Ohio, toward a life Ava might still be living. Just when investigators finally had a direction, the trail collapsed. Jack Rourke, the one man who could explain the letter, the late-night drive, and his sister's cryptic warning, was dead. Records showed he passed away in 1998, buried in an unmarked grave outside Toledo. No interviewers, no confession, no chance to confront the only suspect the town ever feared. His death forced detectives to shift focus. If Jack was involved, he wasn't working alone. And if Martha helped move a child, then someone else had orchestrated the plan. But with the prime suspect gone, the case slipped back into silence. Witnesses faded, memories blurred, and for a moment, it felt like Mill Creek would carry Ava's ghost forever. The investigation had hit rock bottom. While police battled dead ends, Ava's mother lived in a different kind of prison, one built from hope and heartbreak. She kept Ava's room exactly as it was in 1957, her tiny shoes lined up beneath the window. She wrote a letter to her daughter every birthday, storing them in a box no one was allowed to touch. Detectives often talked about the emotional weight of cold cases, but hers was different. She refused every offer to declare Ava legally dead. "My daughter didn't disappear," she told reporters. "Someone took her, and someone knows why." Her certainty would prove more accurate than anyone imagined. Lauren Holle read the 1958 letter again, hunting for anything she might have overlooked. This time, a faint imprint on the back caught her eye: on address, partially pressed into the paper as someone wrote on a sheet above it. She enhanced the imprint using modern forensic imaging, revealing a near-complete name linked to an Ohio residential record from the late 60s. The name wasn't T. Martha's. It wasn't Jack's. It belonged to a young woman listed as a Collins on a Social Security anomaly report. Ava's initials. Halle handed the discovery to authorities, and suddenly the case ignited with new urgency. If the record was genuine, Ava Collins died in 1957. She had lived long enough to leave a paper trail. Detectives followed the Social Security lead to a quiet suburb outside Columbus. The house looked ordinarily white siding, trimmed hedges, nothing remarkable. But the woman who opened the door changed everything. She was in her 60s, calm, polite, and unaware that her entire life was about to be redefined. When investigators asked for her birth name, she hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know. I was told it didn't matter." A DNA swab confirmed what no one dared to believe. The woman living under a fabricated identity for decades was Ava Collins. Her memories were fractured, shaped by stories she'd been told rather than experiences she lived. She remembered a long car ride, a frightened woman holding her close, and a man she called uncle, though no blood connection existed. The discovery sent shockwaves through Pennsylvania. Mill Creek hadn't lost a child. Someone had stolen an entire life. Ava's statement filled in the darkness the investigation never could. Jack Rourke hadn't acted alone. He was working under someone else's orders. Someone who feared Ava's father due to a personal dispute that spiraled out of control. Ava wasn't taken randomly. She was taken as leverage, then hidden when the plan collapsed. Martha Rourke kept her alive out of guilt, moving across states to keep her brother away. Mill Creek struggled to accept the layers of betrayal. Takase wasn't a single crime. It was a chain of choices that destroyed a family and scarred a town for generations. Justice came late, but the truth finally surfaced. Ava Collins returned to Mill Creek only once, standing on the road where her childhood ended. The town felt smaller, quieter, almost suspended in time. Detectives later said this case changed how every missing child file would be handled. No detail ignored, no lead dismissed, no box forgotten. Her story became a reminder. Some answers don't disappear. They wait.